Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another session. I'm really excited about today's episode for a number of reasons. We're going to be getting into some of the March energy update. I'm going to be talking about this month's theme, which is all about the law of rhythm. And I'm also going to be sharing a very vulnerable and raw experience that I've been moving through behind the scenes that I feel like is really going to bring context to the whole manifestation, ascension, healing journey that I know that you're on if you're listening to this podcast. And I think I'm going to start off with that because I have been on this journey of healing and evolving and ascending and bringing my gifts and my knowledge and learning and educating myself to the world for the last 4.5 years. And throughout any point of your manifestation experience, whether you're calling in more money, you're calling in more clients, you're calling in better relationships, better health experiences, whatever that is, you think what you want is what you want. But I can tell you from a personal experience that it's actually not what you think you want. What do I mean by this? Since I got started on this journey, and I went a little bit into this last week and the week before when I shared about just, how I essentially got to here, I started a lot of my manifestation out of pure desperation. I was going through all the healing work and genuinely doing that work, but it was still being manifested out of desperation. I was seeking, my husband not dying and me hopefully being able to retire him and having these really great experiences. And whenever you get into the realm of entrepreneurship and you really learn to ascend beyond the identities of desperation and lack thereof and limitation, and you really learn how to rewire your mindset and your mentality in a lot of ways, you get into this ladder of wanting more. Okay, I figured out how to retire my husband and I figured out how to do it on $5,000 a month. Amazing. What else? Ooh, I want the $10,000 months. I want the booked out clients. I want the full calendar. I want to have this incredible podcast. I want these amazing guests. I want all of these things. I want the money in the bank. I want to be able to get loans again. I want all the things. And you slowly but surely start to see all these things start to show up in your life. And in December, we were in this place. Well, actually, we started this kind of the end of October. We were in this place where we were originally going to stay through the winter in our trailer and just do RVing and enjoy the summer again at the acreage property that we were on and do gardening and all that kind of stuff and really just save like we had been able to while we were there. And Phil started getting sick. So we had to really rethink and strategize what we were going to do for the winter. And he wasn't in any shape to be able to make sure that the water lines weren't freezing and getting in and out of the under the trailer to make sure that everything was working. And so we manifested this beautiful home that we're in today at the most incredible price with the most incredible landlord. And we have had some of the biggest consecutive months since then. We haven't had under a 15K revenue month since December. And that is just going to keep going. But what's so fascinating is that once I started breaking that, what's that next level look like for me? So I got to the 5K, I got to the 10K, so now I'm going up to the 15K. And I started to desire this manifestation of, what does 20K months look like? Well, the savings could look like this and the debt repayment could look like this. And, the way that we can move forward with other things can look like this. And my business for the first time in 4 years was able to qualify for a loan so we can really work on rebuilding our credit to get a mortgage within the next 2 years. And so we got the vehicle and it was the perfect vehicle at the perfect price. And me and Phil were having a conversation and I was like, you know what? I want to have another baby. And so we found out at the end of January that we were going to be having another baby. And I really just pulled back in my life and I realized that all these things that I had been desiring and I had been manifesting weren't actually necessarily making me happy. Though these are all great things and this is all great news, I continued to find myself more depleted, drained, and lost than ever before. Lost in what my vision looked like moving forward, lost in what my business structure was going to look like moving forward, finding myself out of alignment with certain offers that I carry, and feeling like there wasn't necessarily anything else that was inspiring me to really create or put out into this world. And this isn't a message about how I found depression or how I found some kind of underlying illness or cause. This is more so a message to really speak to what you think you want isn't going to necessarily bring you the happiness that you think that it will, if gratitude and doing that continual inner work is not a part of the plan. I thought that there would be a point where I just would not need to do the work anymore. I could just get out of bed and do whatever I wanted, and that was just going to be all fine and dandy. And that's not to say that every day has to be this stringent and strategic experience in your life. But what it is saying is that doing things to just do them and doing things to get you more in your life isn't going to be fulfilling. I was doing the meditations because I was genuinely feeling better after them, but my intention was more so to do them because I started seeing a lot of results. I wasn't doing the meditations because I was feeling some deep internal benefit. I was just seeing some really radical, incredible results. And the difference between those two experiences, doing it for the deep internal benefit versus doing it for the external validation, essentially the instant gratification, is that whatever you're working towards isn't going to be what you end up thinking it is. It's not going to bring you the happiness that you want it to bring you. I've also found myself really struggling mentally to keep my head above water with this first trimester of my pregnancy. And I think more so than ever before, what it's teaching me is that my happiness has to be solely reliant on my internal world. And though I know this, and I say this, and I preach this, and I teach this, there was a part of me that in a sense started to forget this. Because somewhere along the way, and where that started, I'm not sure, all the lack and scarcity that got me to this place of really achieving everything that I wanted was now ready to fall away, and I was not ready to let go of it. So though I overcame a lot of the experience of manifesting from lack and scarcity, there was still lack and scarcity that was existing in my world. And achieving more things and receiving more things and manifesting more things was constantly showing up to essentially prove to me that if I didn't find the passion and the vision as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is never going to bring me lifelong fulfillment. And I want to share that with you because in the front of everyone's world, in what people portray in the world, is always going to be a highlight reel. And if you've noticed, I haven't really been very present much on Instagram lately like I normally am, because I have been going through some deep internal reflections and healing work behind the scenes that more often than not, I actually don't really talk too much about my own personal life. I love teaching and I love training and I love coaching. But when it comes to like sharing more vulnerably, just like me and my life and the places where I'm at, I never really resonated with that. Not so much for any particular reason other than I think for me, it just made me uncomfortable. So there's a particular reason. But the more that I go into this work right now, as I'm navigating this ascension, I'm really realizing that uncomfortability is more so this lack of empathy for my own vulnerability. And it's really fascinating because I know that there is going to be some of you listening to this that are having aha moments right now as to why certain things are not bringing you the joy and the satisfaction that you thought that they would in your life. And a big part of that is because of a disconnect to your why. It's a disconnect from your vision of where you're going. It was easy, to say the least, to manifest a six-figure business, a multiple six-figure business. We'll cross a total of over $350,000 in sales in the lifetime of this business this year. And that's incredible. I have a booked out calendar. I have booked out clients. My one-on-one roster is full. My membership is absolutely blowing up because of all those people out there seeking the self-healing. And it's such a beautiful community space to turn to. But I was finding that even in all these things that I wanted, there was this lack of happiness that was coming with it. And a big part of that had to do with not having a why. A goal without a vision and without a why is going to be a temporary sense of satisfaction. And bridging this into the law of rhythm. And the law of rhythm states that everything vibrates and moves to certain rhythms. These rhythms establish seasons, cycles, stages of developments, and patterns. Each cycle reflects the regularity of God's universe. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The law of rhythm states that the energy in the universe is like a pendulum. Whenever something swings to the right, it must then swing to the left. Everything in existence is involved in a dance, swaying, flowing, swinging back and forth. Everything is either growing or dying, yet nothing is being destroyed or created, simply transmuted and directed. And how this is relevant to my story and my share is that as the pendulum was swinging right, and let's say right for me is the sense of moving forward, it's all these big manifestations coming to life. As it would swing back to the left, which is my old paradigm, my old reality, if that area of my life wasn't completed, wasn't whole, wasn't solidified, forgiven, and acknowledged in the ways that it needed to be, my inner child didn't have the voice that it needed, the lack and scarcity mindset that existed underneath all of the big manifestations wasn't addressed, the more the pendulum would flow right, the more resistance that I would feel, the lack of happiness that I would feel. And the more that would go back left, the more of all the old voices would come to the surface. And I feel like for you right now, if you're resonating with this, that's likely what's taking place in your life. If you're constantly finding that you're running up against this uncomfortableness of, I'm doing the inner work, but nothing's changing. I'm doing the inner healing, nothing's changing. I'm doing the inner child stuff, but nothing's changing. I'm making these plans and I'm making these decisions, but nothing in my life is changing. I really invite you to reflect on what's your reason for why you want to change. Why are you wanting to move forward? What, other than what you don't want, is what you actually want? So, for example, my whole experience getting up to this point was because I didn't want my husband to die. I didn't want to be broke, and I didn't want to have to experience scarcity anymore. But that wasn't why. That was out of lack mentality. My reason moving forward is very much this desire to serve. Though it has always been, it wasn't necessarily my primary focus. It was more so out of the scarcity mindset that got me to this point that was like, hey, if you do this and you do this really well, you can really make something of all this experience. You can help people, you can, provide better for your life and your family, and your husband doesn't have to go to work, all the good things. And now, because I haven't fully given or solidified those old voices, they are surfacing as I'm rising into this next level of really questioning, what's my vision moving forward? What's my why moving forward? Why am I still doing this 4 years in? And what am I going to be doing in 4 more years from this point? Really looking at these changes, these goals, these transitions, And not only just the external goals, but who do I have to become in order to fulfill and achieve these? Whereas to this point, I never really did a lot of that work up until probably like 2020 when I started really hiring mentors and coaches. I really just tried to do everything myself, and it reflected in not having a lot of energy at the end of the day or the end of the week, and hustling and grinding. And though I'm truly an advocate for the hustle and the grind, I think the society, and I've said this before, really demonizes it in a sense to almost diminish what people are capable of. Like, we have to sacrifice, we have to hustle. And not only that we have to, but we get to. Like, if you really want to get somewhere and somewhere big in your life, or you have a really big goal and you want to achieve it, there's going to be sacrifice. And at the very basis of that is going to be the old identity of who you were. And in order for you to have something different, you need to become something different. And that's the premise of all energy work, quantum healing, ascension, all of it, right? And so now as I go through this ascension, this new wave of understanding myself, it's really in the intentionality of everything. It's focusing on what I do want based out of positivity. I do want to continue to see people's lives radically changing. I do want to continue to show up and teach people about energy and intuition. I do want the big monetary goals and the home and all the things. I want to be able to take my children and my family on trips and flights and all these, incredible experiences. I want to be able to provide even more, to pay off even more debt. I want to be able to experience the joys and the bliss and the happiness and really bask in the fruition of all the things that I have created and have, come to fruition for me. But without that vision and without that reason and without the understanding of who I am meant to become in that process, nothing feels fulfilling. There's not a sense of happiness behind the achievements. You would think that, once you have the thing, once you have the relationship, once you have the money, once you have the clients, once you have the business, once you have the goals, once you have all the things, once you've achieved it, that happiness is just going to automatically come. But it's not actually, in fact, true. I remember having the conversation with my husband, and it was like, okay, I'm ready to have another baby. And he was on board and he wanted to too. And then it was like 2.5 weeks later, we found out that we were pregnant. And it was in that moment where it really hit me. And I realized that that by far was the fastest instant manifestation that has ever existed for me. But my life didn't change. It wasn't different. There was just something else that was changing. And not that by any means is a small thing, but it just goes to show that you can get the very things that you want, and you can get them fast. You can get them real fast, no matter what they are. And the biggest limitation is going to be the stories that you tell yourself. I really don't believe that women have fertility issues. I think that we just create a lot of beliefs, and we've plugged ourselves up with a lot of hormone blockers like birth control, and the food and the water that we eat and drink plays a role in that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's some long-term diagnostic issue. I think that everything truly can be healed. Our bodies are absolutely miraculous. You can turn on new gene keys and cells and codes through deep trances and meditations. And the same thing exists in all other diseases and ailments and illnesses that exist in our life, right? Most of them stemming from unprocessed and unhealed emotional experiences from the past. That's why forgiveness is so powerful. But I digress. In your life right now, if you're feeling that sense of, when I get there, I'll be happy, or you're already there and you're not finding yourself in this state of happiness, I really invite you to come back and look at what rhythm is flowing in your life right now. Where is that pendulum swinging? Where are you directing your energy? What are you doing to transmute the things that are no longer serving you? Are you in fact having the conversations, or are you putting them off? Are you taking the risks and taking the leaps? Or do you keep telling yourself why it's not going to work right now? Are you putting yourself out there in places and spaces and community engagement experiences, wherever, to be available to find somebody that you want to manifest in your life? What are you doing to actually get yourself into that vibration, into those experiences of where you desire to be? What rhythm flows in your life is a direct correlation to the internal frequency within you. And as you're moving forward, as you're desiring better things, bigger things, deeper inner healing, all that it is, you can't move forward until you give what's holding you back a voice. So in this case, it was this last ditch effort of that old version of me that's been clinging on for 4 years that says you got to work 7 days a week and you got to show up at the most ridiculous hours to, compensate other people's schedules and time. You get to put on all these sales because that's how people work. You get to do all these things. And though I have a very different mentality around sales and such now than I ever did getting started, I see it a lot in some of my clients as well when they'll put on sales and it's out of a sense of lack or scarcity that people won't buy. But I can see that same part of my own journey in the past where that has been the case as well. And some of that identity has clung on and has moved in my life in different ways. It moved in, we're doing a lot of work around debt repayment right now. And thankfully, due to all the inner healing and all the support that I've had, I see debt as a very different thing. But when it comes to actually paying off the debt and what that looks like and appropriately planning to pay off that debt, not just trying to throw every extra dollar that we possibly could find at it, right? That's an experience that I get to navigate right now and really ask, who within myself is speaking? Who within my mind is speaking right now? What age is she? What story is she running? What's her experience right now? Because until you start to do this for yourself, you're always going to be operating out of a story, an unconscious story that is running the show. And if you're not consciously aware of it, well, nobody else is going to be. So if you're not applying yourself in the sense of doing the inner work and doing it to uncover who you are and better your experience in life and, become a better version of you, I think that becoming a better version of you, there's a lot of stigma to it because it's a sense of, in some cases, not always, but this sense of a rat race where it's I can never be satisfied with where I'm at right now because then there's a sense of it's not good enough or I'm not good enough. And I actually argue that that's not necessarily the case. Just because you want to better yourself, that doesn't immediately mean that you have to default to where you are right now is not good enough. And what I mean by this is I'm recognizing all these stories and the mentalities that are coming up through this ascension experience that I'm going through, but I'm not defaulting this to mean that I'm not good enough. I can see where a lot of these ideologies and the beliefs stem from, deeper levels of forgiveness that I get to apply to certain relationships in my life, different conversations that I'm really being invited to have with certain people. And not because anybody's better or worse, but because this is just what my soul needs to do to free itself into this next level. And I'm more than willing to do this work. It becomes a condition, right? Going through the hardships. But it's hard to go through the hardships when you don't have the self-awareness. And that's why through these experiences and through this ascension, and as my energy really started to retreat and want me to pull back a lot, I could recognize and realize that something needed to come out. And so making this space for myself was an absolute non-negotiable. I pulled back a lot from social media. I really have been just showing up to support my clients and in my programs and be with the family. And I've known that through the entire experience that me not showing up wasn't going to directly reflect not making sales. Me not showing up wasn't going to mean that people would forget who I am, right? So that sense of not being enough was not the case as I moved through and processed these stories. But I could realize as I was giving myself the space that the stories that were happening in my subconscious that were calling me to retreat, I was now able, through my tools and my awareness, to be able to pull them to the surface and really do these deeper self-assessments on, well, why isn't this bringing me happiness? And why isn't this bringing me joy? And where am I just doing things out of these old mentalities? And who is speaking? And what does she need? And how do I get to create more forgiveness? What standards do I get to set? So I share this with you because in this space of rhythm, there is always going to be external distractions. There's always going to be something outside of you that says, ooh, if I just do this, then I can get there. But I really invite you to, instead of looking at things in that way, to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to get there? Who do I become in the process of getting to that space, getting to that achievement, experiencing that goal, that manifestation? And what does that look like for me internally as I navigate through this season, these tides, these changes? Because that's going to teach you so much more about yourself, not only just in a compassionate sense and an understanding sense, but also with empathy, also with strength, also with courage. We're in this space in our lives right now where we don't even know if we're going to stay in the house that we're in right now for the entire year. So we signed a lease for a year, and our initial intention was to either look into buying this place in like the spring or fall, or staying here for 2 years. And we ended up doing private treatments for Phil, so we don't know if we're going to end up purchasing this place. But then we even just started sitting down a couple days ago and, really started assessing, where do we want to be in the next couple years? And not based on the events of the world, right? So the world is ramping up. I said this in the beginning of February, that the world is going to get louder. And here we come into March and the world is getting louder. And I'm going to, be the first to tell you that, maybe not necessarily the best of news, the world is going to continue to get louder. If we've noticed any cyclical patterns over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, is that it is about perpetuating constant fear so that the global elite agendas can get rolled out. And that means that as people started to stop caring as much about all the children movements, and they stopped caring as much about coronavirus, and they stopped caring as much about arguing over the vaccines, and they stopped caring as much, oh, here comes a war, oh, here comes inflation, oh, here comes economic crisis. It's like really being mindful in understanding that that same media that lied to you for the past 2.5 years is going to be doing the same thing moving forward. It's like all of a sudden people just a switch flips and they forget that the same thing that got us to this point is still perpetuating the same agenda, just with a different topic. And the amount of videos that I've seen come out where it's video game clips or from movies about all this Ukraine stuff, it's like, I can't even. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that they're not in a war, but at the same time, read a history book. Russia has always constantly been fighting for Ukraine, as they have a plethora of resources that are global. They're global leaders in a lot of mineral distributions and farming and agriculture stuff. And so, of course, that might not necessarily be the entirety of the case, as the US also has a lot of development labs in that place as well. But remember that you're not always going to get the story. And quite honestly, if you're not involved in dealing with the internal affairs, you're probably not going to get much of any story other than what the media shows you. And so, though I have compassion for and empathy for what's going on, or I guess it's sympathy really, we can't get wrapped up in this because we have no idea what's going on. And at this point, everybody's become a journalist nowadays. And to me, you can clearly hear the annoyance in my voice when I say that. And ask yourself, is it actually worth it? Is it worth it consuming your mind and your energy with another thing? Because like I've been talking about in the law of rhythm, the pendulum's going to swing both ways. So if you're fulfilling yourself with all this external noise, on the left end of that swing, the internal side of things, you're going to be distraught. You're not going to feel fulfilled. You're going to be unsettled. You're going to constantly be wondering why things aren't going your way. What are you consuming? What are you plugging into? And we're really being invited to lead with so much more internal love. We can't have or show more external love if we don't lead with more internal love and cultivate that. So really going into the mentalities and the areas of your life right now. And I know that it can be challenging to do the inner work or set the standards or have the conversations or take the actions or more than anything, be consistent. But nobody's going to come and do it for you. So how bad do you want it? What's your reason for change? What is your why for moving forward? And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, right? And I gave myself this butt kicking the last couple of days as I've been really doing a lot of introspection and just looking at where I'm at in my life. And I've come out with so many big aha moments and downloads and insight about what's been standing in my way and where I'm really excited to move forward and what that looks like. I downloaded this so much clarity about finishing off the book that I've been writing for the last year and a half, and also this new program that's going to come out in the beginning of April. So there's so much that comes through when you create the space to really go within, and more than anything, to have the tools to equip you. I've had so much mental drama going on in this first trimester of my pregnancy that if I didn't have the tools or know how to navigate or neutralize my emotions, I would be such a hot mess right now. And okay, arguably pregnancy, welcome to the experience. But that doesn't mean that it has to be a bad experience. Okay, morning sickness exists. There's nothing you can do about that, or afternoon or evening, right? Who knows when it comes? For me, it's been just all over the place. But your energy is up and down as your body is literally creating a human being. Okay, I can't control that. But then your mind wants to go into all the stories of all the reasons of why you should be doing all the things. And when you're not, and when you're not in that consistent mode for yourself, it can be extremely mentally challenging and energetically draining. And so having the tools really supports and equipping you with the ability to have the grace and the surrender and everything that's going on. And more than anything, if you're struggling to do it alone, take the leap and hire the coach. I say this often and I preach this because that has been such a big game changer for me. And sometimes the investment is the scariest thing, but what's actually scary underneath that is not getting the results that you want, or not being able to show up and be consistent like you know that you need to be. And so it's never about the money. And if the story that I've shared with you so far teaches you anything, it's not about the money. It's not about having more money. It's not about gaining more money. It's not about more clients. It's not about having the money in your bank, the bills paid, the savings stacked up. It's not about that. Money provides more opportunities, and it just amplifies more of who you are. But sometimes in order to understand more of who you are, you get to put out the money. And I'm such a big advocate for just doing the thing and going first and figuring it out, because in my life and in so many other people's lives that I have studied who are in really great, bountiful places in their lives, they say the same thing. You got to get the coach, be a part of the experiences, be in the rooms with the people who are where you want to be, and stop out of that scarcity lack mindset trying to figure it out on your own. And if you are in a financial place where that is your option, what are you doing to overcome that? What are you doing to show up anyways? In the beginning of my journey, I didn't have the money to invest. Credit cards maxed out, negative $250 in the bank on a good day, trying to scramble to get groceries basically. And I would spend hours a day listening to podcasts and taking free workshops and taking notes and showing up in all the ways that I possibly could, and just doing little tweaks until I was available for taking the leap and investing in the coach. And I've shared this story before where I used our rent the same day that my husband came home saying he couldn't work anymore to invest in my first coach. And I manifested that back within 2 weeks, but I also showed up to do the work. I showed up to do the assignments. I committed to the reason why I wanted to move forward. And though it was out of a sense of scarcity, it still worked at the time. And now as I go into a new level where I desire to have the $500,000 company and the $1 million company, and having more time with the family and less time necessarily working, figuring out how to do that and what that looks like, and all those types of things, that's going to require a new version of me, just like your change is going to require a new version of you. So in this month, March, the energy update is really about swinging and swaying and flowing and finding your rhythm, finding your dance, finding the way that you sway through your life, and not in a sense of swaying between an old paradigm of reality and a new, an old paradigm of reality and a new, but really finding where you get to find your solid ground and move with the ebbs and the flows of your life, right? And that might require extra support. That might require an accountability buddy, but more than anything, it's going to require your own commitment. And yeah, it really does require commitment, because beyond anything else, humans naturally are motivated by achievement. So if you're someone who's like, oh, I'm unmotivated or I'm lazy, right? No, you're not. You just don't have a good enough reason why. Nobody's lazy and nobody's unmotivated when they really know why they want to move forward in all senses of their life. So I really invite you to assess that for yourself and to clean up the relationships in your life where they're just not serving you anymore. And that can be challenging when it's people very close to you, but at the same time, where do you want to go and how do you want to get there? Like, truly. For me, this was a difficult one in the beginning. I lost 6 really close friends that I grew up with throughout since grade 2. We were friends for 18 years, and it wasn't because they were better and I was worse, or I was better and they were worse. It's just that I really realized that a lot of where they were at in their life and the things that they did and the way that they were wasn't in alignment for me anymore. And they're really great people and they have really beautiful hearts, but those weren't the type of people that were going to help me to get to where I needed to be. And I surrounded myself in a lot of online communities, and I found a lot of really incredible people that were doing big things and having conversations with them and asking questions and, figuring it out. But at the end of the day, it was still up to me to commit. It was still up to me to commit to those live Facebook lives 3-4 times a week at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It was still up to me to show up to the calls that I was booking with people and doing the readings. It was up to me to continue to learn and grow and educate and adapt as I was growing. It was up to me to show up even when only 2 people signed up for my first program. It was up to me to continue to show up even when I didn't know how I was going to make my next payment for my coach. It was up to me to continue to show up even when I got my first refund request because the reading that I did not connect. I was not able to connect to this woman's loved ones on the other side. And later I found out after I issued the refund that the person she wanted to connect to had murdered her brother and murdered her mom and committed suicide and abused them their whole life. And so in that moment where I was so worried and distraught that this refund took place, it turns out that the spirit that I would have been connecting to was just like a very evil spirit. And I was grateful afterwards because there was still stuff to work through with that one, but it taught me a lot about refunds and customer service and putting policies and different experiences in place. So everything always truly happens for your greater benefit if you're willing to really look at and adjust and adapt and have a bigger perspective as to what's taking place and what it can be showing you in all experiences in your life. And so I'm going to end this episode off here because I feel like there's a lot of really big takeaways that you can move through with this episode today. I would love to hear your takeaways, so feel free to message me on Instagram. There we go. Tag me on Instagram. And if you are looking for deeper support, we have the membership community that is here to help you find alignment throughout this next month. We're doing a 30-day meditation experience, and we have 2 incredible guests coming in to speak on the power of meditation, really educating you behind how beneficial meditation is, as well as another incredible guest who's going to be teaching you all about shifting your reality. I have also opened up my Ascension program, which is a self-paced 4-week course that will support you with all the tools and the techniques to move through your ascension. I have been going through some of the concepts in this course myself. They are truly timeless, and they will support you as you move through the depth of your journey, your healing, your expansion. So those are the 2 places where you can come hang out this month, the membership community or the Ascension program. And I hope that this episode supports you in really getting a better understanding for what it's like to really do the inner work and to show up for it, and that not everything is going to be what you think it is when you finally get what you think that you want. That truly happiness is an inside job, and it takes dedication more than anything else. So I love you, and we will chat soon. I had some really incredible guests scheduled for this month, and my computer got completely wiped. Another lesson in surrender. And I lost all my interviews that I had for the next month and a half. I'm so upset about that. But we have some guests rebooking in, thankfully. So we'll have some really awesome people coming in and sharing their stories about healing and just continuing on the journey and commitment and vision and all the things. And yeah, we're going to have some pretty cool episodes this month. So stay tuned, and I will chat with you next week. Remember, don't forget to find the magic in today.